What have these Spaniards to do, to come hither to combat the true believers, who in their own land are their lords and taskmasters? With them I would mix in no warlike pastime. Let not the knights of Leon or Asturias hear you speak thus of them," said the Knight of the Leopard. "But," added he, smiling at the recollection of the morning's combat, "if, instead of a reed, you are inclined to stand the cast of a battle axe, there are enough of Western warriors who would gratify your longing. By the beard of my father, sir," with an approach to laughter, "the game is too rough for mere sport. I will never shun them in battle, but my head," pressing his hand to his brow, "will not for a while permit me to seek them in sport." "I would that you saw the axe of King Richard," answered the Western warrior, "to which that which hangs at my saddle bow weighs but as a feather." "We hear much of that island sovereign," said the Saracen. "Art thou one of his subjects?" "One of his followers I am, for this expedition," answered the knight, "and honoured in the service, but not born his subject, although a native in the island in which he reigns." "How mean you?" said the Eastern soldier. "Have you then two kings in one poor island?" "As thou sayest," said the Scot, for such was Sir Kenneth by birth, "it is even so; and yet, although the inhabitants of the two extremities of that island are engaged in frequent war, the country can, as thou seest, furnish forth such a body of men at arms as may go far to shake the unholy hold which your master hath laid on the cities of Zion. By the beard of Saladin, Nazarene, but that it is a thoughtless and boyish folly, I could laugh at the simplicity of your great Sultan, who comes hitherto to make conquests of desert and rocks, and dispute the possession of them with those who have tenfold numbers at command, while he leaves a part of his narrow islet, in which he was born a sovereign, to the dominion of another sceptre than his. Surely, Sir Kenneth, you and the other good men of your country should have submitted yourselves to the dominion of this King Richard ere you left your native land, divided against itself, to set forth on this expedition?" Hasty and fierce was Kenneth's answer. "No, by the bright light of heaven! If the King of England had not set forth to the Crusade till he was sovereign of Scotland, the crescent might for me, and all true hearted Scots, glimmer for ever on the walls of Zion." Thus far he had proceeded, when, recollecting himself, he muttered, "Mea culpa, mea culpa. What have I, a soldier of the cross, to do with recollection of war betwixt Christian nations?" The rapid expression of feeling, corrected by the dictates of duty, did not escape the Moslem, who, if he did not entirely understand all which it conveyed, saw enough to convince him with the assurance that Christians, as well as Moslemah, had private feelings of personal pique and national quarrels which were not entirely reconcilable. But the Saracens were a race, polished, perhaps, to the utmost extent which their religion permitted, and particularly capable of entertaining high ideas of courtesy and politeness, and such sentiments prevented his taking any notice of the inconsistency of Sir Kenneth's feelings in the opposite character of a Scot and a Crusader. Meanwhile, as they advanced, the scene began to change around them. They were now turning to the eastward, and had reached the range of steep and barren hills which binds in that quarter the naked plain, and varies the surface of the country without changing its sterile character. Sharp, rocky eminences began to rise around them, and in a short time, deep declivities and descents, both formidable in height and difficult from the narrowness of the path, offered to the travellers obstacles of a different kind from those with which they had recently contended. Dark caverns and chasms amongst the rocks, those grottos so often alluded to in the Scripture, yawned fearfully on either side as they proceeded, and their Scottish knight was informed by the emir that these were often the refuge of beasts of prey, or of men still more ferocious, who, driven to desperation by the constant war, and the oppression exercised by the soldiery, as well of the Cross as of the Crescent, had become robbers, and spared neither rank nor religion, neither sex nor age, in their depredations. the Scottish knight listened with indifference to the accounts of ravages committed by wild beasts or wicked men, secure as he felt himself in his own valour and personal strength. But he was struck with mysterious dread when he recollected that he was now in the awful wilderness of the 40 days' fast, and the scene of the actual personal temptation, wherewith the evil principle was permitted to assail the Son of Man. He withdrew his attention gradually from the light and worldly conversation of the infidel warrior beside him, and, however acceptable his gay and gallant bravery would have rendered him as a companion elsewhere, Sir Kenneth felt as if, in these wildernesses, the waste and dry place in which the foul spirits were wont to wander when expelled the mortals whose forms they possessed, a barefooted friar would have been a better associate than the gay but unbelieving Paynim. These feelings embarrassed him, the rather that the Saracen spirits appeared to rise with the journey, and because the farther he penetrated into the gloomy recesses of the mountains, the lighter became his conversation, and when he found that unanswered, the louder grew his song. Sir Kenneth knew enough of the Eastern languages to be assured that he chanted sonnets of love, containing all the glowing praises of beauty in which the Oriental poets are so fond of luxuriating, and which, therefore, were peculiarly unfit for a serious or devotional strain of thought, the feeling best becoming the wilderness of the temptation. With inconsistency enough, the Saracen also sung lays in praise of wine, the liquid ruby of the Persian poets, and his gaiety at length became so unsuitable to the Christian knight's contrary train of sentiments, as, but for the promise of amity which they had exchanged, would most likely have made Sir Kenneth take measures to change his note. As it was, the Crusader felt as if he had by his side some gay, licentious fiend, who endeavoured to ensnare his soul, and endanger his immortal salvation by inspiring loose thoughts of earthly pleasure, and thus polluting his devotion, at a time when his faith as a Christian and his vow as a pilgrim called on him for a serious and penitential state of mind. He was thus greatly perplexed and undecided how to act, and it was in a tone of hasty displeasure that, at length breaking silence, he interrupted the lay of the celebrated Rudpiki, in which he prefers the mole on his mistress's bosom to all the wealth of Bokhara and Samarcand. "Saracen," said the Crusader sternly, "blinded as thou art, and plunged amidst the errors of a false law, thou shouldst yet comprehend that there are some places more holy than others, and that there are some scenes also in which the Evil One hath more than ordinary powers over sinful mortals. I will not tell thee for what awful reasons this place, these rocks, these caverns with their gloomy arches, leading as it were to the central abyss, are held in the especial haunt of Satan and his angels. It is enough that I have been long warned to beware of this place by wise and holy men, to whom the qualities of the unholy region are well known. Wherefore, Saracen, forbear thy foolish and ill-timed levity, and turn thy thoughts to things more suited to the spot, although, alas for thee, thy best prayers are but as blasphemy and sin." The Saracen listened with some surprise, and then replied, with good humour and gaiety, only so far repressed as courtesy required, "Good Sir Kenneth, methinks you deal unequally by your companion, or else ceremony is but indifferently taught amongst your western tribes. I took no offence when I saw you gorge hog's flesh and drink wine, and permitted you to enjoy a treat which you called your Christian liberty, only pitying in my heart your fool pastimes. Wherefore, then, shouldst thou take scandal, because I cheer, to the best of my power, a gloomy road with a cheerful verse? What saith the poet? Song is like the dews of heaven on the bosom of the desert, it cools the path of the traveller." "Friend Saracen," said the Christian, "I blame not the love of minstrelsy and of gay science, albeit we yield unto it even too much room in our thoughts when they should be bent on better things. But prayers and holy psalms are better fitting than lays of love, or of wine cups, when men walk in this valley of the shadow of death, full of fiends and demons, whom the prayers of holy men have driven forth from the haunts of humanity to wander amidst scenes as accursed as themselves." Speak not thus of the Genii, Christian.